Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 56, Clans of Caledonia. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Dan.
In this episode, we're going to highlight a few games we've been playing lately. Then we're going to do a feature review of Clans of Caledonia. And then the highlight of this episode, Juma Al-JouJou, the designer of Clans and the owner of Karma Games, joined us for an interview that we are excited to share with you.
It was awesome.
It was so cool talking to him.
Yeah, Juma he's an amazing guy. So I'm excited for listeners to hear that interview.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Clans is an amazing game.
Yeah, we
It's
have
one of our
talked
favorites.
Yeah, we've talked about Clans like many times. We did our top 30. I think it was a little over a year ago, and it was pretty high up on everybody's list.
It was
the highest spot on one of our lists.
Yes,
right?
It was. Dan, it's good to have you back.
I'm glad to be here.
Dan joined us on the Family Feud episode
That's right.
and shared his vast Star Wars Legion knowledge with
correct.
us in that episode as well.
Yep. And Dan is also a Clans fan.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of Clans. In fact, I was looking at my stats on that. I have played it 19 times with 19 different people
Oh, wow.
for a total of just over 43 hours of Clans.
43 hours.
43 hours, that's a lot of playtime.
You're spreading the Clans love, like 19 different people.
19
You've played
different
19 games. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's interesting enough, my wife has the highest win percentage, which is an anomaly. She wins like 66% of the time.
Oh, that's
Wow.
cool. So
She
your
wins
wife
a lot.
does. That's awesome. Yeah. I haven't played this one with my wife yet. I think she would like it.
I have 25 plays
25 plays.
and like another 50 on BGA. So
Yeah. I got-
definitely up there.
Yeah, I have 17 total. Don't know the BGA plays, but it's definitely one that has gotten to the table many times.
This
It's
is
awesome.
definitely in my top 9. It might be in my top 4. I really love the game a lot.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Dan, you just got back from a cruise?
Got back from Cozumel and the Bahamas. So yes,
Nice.
Awesome. I just got back from work.
I got back from work after another awesome board game designer interview,
Right.
which we may hint at the end of this episode.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think we should. It's
Yeah.
exciting news from the Longest Turn for sure.
Absolutely. Well, should we jump into the games that we've been playing lately?
Let's do it.
Dan's actually going to...
He'll join us a little bit later for the feature review of Clans. Tyler and I will talk about a few of the games that we've been getting to the table. All right, so let's jump into the games we've been playing lately.
So I've talked about this a lot in the past. We did a feature review of it, Distilled, right?
What you've talked about Distilled?
Yeah. I'm not going to go into detail about the gameplay any more than I already have in previous episodes. But Dave Beck was nice enough to send us the expansions. I talked about the Cask Strength expansion a couple episodes ago, I think, and that was fantastic. I got some plays with the Africa and Middle East expansion, and this was an expansion that came out originally with the Kickstarter. It hasn't been available for a while. It's been kind of out of print, but he recently did a reprint of it. And this expansion just adds a ton of stuff. I mean, it's adds new identities, new signature recipes, ingredients, 10 new distillery upgrade cards, premium market items, new goal cards, basically new everything gets added to it.
Nice.
And for someone who's played Distilled before, you got to just play with this expansion every time. It doesn't add a lot of weight, complexity to the
Just
to the
more of a
base
good
game. It's
thing.
more of a good thing.
Yeah.
It's fun to read about. And the base game has this, but you get to read about the different spirits, and there's ones that I've never even heard of from Africa and Middle East, right? So I don't know. It's just fun. It's awesome. If you've played Distilled more than a couple times, I would always include this along with the other expansion in your plays of Distilled. Definitely worth checking out and getting. Fantastic game. So
Love it.
And love both the expansions. Love that neither of them add that much complexity, but do tweak some things and make it just that much better.
Those are my favorite types of expansions.
So that is the Distilled Africa and Middle East expansion.
So the publisher CMYK was nice enough to send us some review copies of their games. In that package that we got was a game called Lacuna. And this game was not on my radar at all.
It came out last year, right?
Yep, it came out in 2023. It's designed by Mark Garretts. Art is done by Nick Leifheber. And as I mentioned, it's published by CMYK. So this is a 2-player game. And the game is about collecting flowers on a pond at night. I mean, that sounds riveting, right? It's definitely a unique theme.
It is. And I love the production of this game. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. So I'll talk about the production a little bit. It comes in a cylinder, which presents some problems for storage. It doesn't easily go on a shelf.
You just put it next to the Bang the Bullet.
Yeah, exactly. Like
different theme, but
think about Bang the Bullet. Yeah, it's similar. You got to put it on top of your shelf. But it comes in a cylinder, and in that cylinder there is a cloth. It's a big square. Okay. There's also a bunch of wooden pieces that are flowers. So there's seven different types of flowers. So there's 7 colors, and there's 7 of each flower. Okay. They're these really cool wooden pieces. They're screen printed. They're really well done. It also comes with a ruler. I'll explain why you need a ruler a little bit later. What you do to set up this game is you lay out the cloth mat. There's this big circle in the middle, and then you put all of the pieces back into the cylinder, and it becomes a shaker, which is crazy. I've never seen this in a game before.
The utility of the container of the game is just fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
It's awesome.
It's amazing. So you shake these pieces randomly out onto this cloth mat, and you're trying to kind of distribute them evenly around this circle in the middle. Any pieces that go off the mat, you just kind of throw in the middle. And then you make sure that everything is, there's no clumps, right? And then on your turn, you have 6 pawns, and these pawns are really cool too. They're metal pieces that are either silver or gold, and you keep it. Each side has one side has the silver, one side has the gold. On your turn, what you're doing is you're placing that pawn in between 2 of the same colored flower, and there can't be anything in between those 2 pieces that you're selecting. So you draw an imaginary line between the middle of one to the middle of the other. If there's nothing in between, including a pawn, you can take those 2 pieces. You do that until you've placed all of your pawns, and you're going to have a bunch of flowers in front of you. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the majority of any one flower. So if you get 4 or more of a flower, then you win that flower. And the whole point of the game is you're trying to win 4 or a majority of the flowers, and then you win the game. The cool thing is, once you're done with the first part of the game, then the second part of the game kicks in. And you collect flowers based on where your pawns are located. So if you have a pawn that you put that's closest to a flower, you will then collect that flower, right? That's the second half of the game. Once all the flowers are claimed, you look to see who has the most and who has won the most majority of the flowers, and that is the winner. That's the whole game. The game takes roughly 10, maybe 15 minutes to play. It's super quick, but it is so much fun.
It's just such a fun experience. It plays so quick. I would love to just sit down and play this game and then play it again and then play it again. I mean, I could see myself wanting to do that, right?
Yeah.
We got to play in the other night.
Yep.
You let me borrow it, and I'm pretty sure my wife's going to like this one. So I think that's going to be fun to play it. It's really quick. If you just want to play it once, you get it knocked out in 10 to 15 minutes. Great decisions. It's just back and forth, really quick turns, and a lot of fun. So
yeah, we did. We got it out and played, my wife and I, and we played 2 quick games. It took maybe a half hour, but it was awesome. It was just a fun, relaxing experience. It's one of those games, and you've talked about this a lot, Tyler, that maybe you just end the night with a game of Lacuna.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that kind of a relaxing thing to do, or a fun thing to do with your spouse or, your family or your friends. It's just one of those relaxing kind of fun games, and it's beautiful.
It is.
It's a lot of, it's really pretty when it's all laid out and you're done shaking those pieces onto the the mat or whatever.
Yeah, really nice production.
So yeah, really fun game. I think it's worth checking out. That is Lacuna.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about a Bezier game that came out last year, actually, and it's you're familiar with the silver games from Bezier, right?
Yep.
And I talked about those recently. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about Scram. So it's like silver but in teams. Okay.
Awesome.
So you can play 2v2 or 3v3. There is rules for 2v1. But we played 2v2 at a big game night. It was one of the games we had on the table for that night, and it was just a lot of fun. Unlike Silver, not all of the cards have abilities on them. But basically in Silver and in Scram, you're trying to get the critters out of your campsite. Okay. And each card has a critter. There might be a snake or a skunk or whatever. And those critters are doing annoying things in your campsite. You're trying to get them out. So you're trying to score the fewest points at the end of 4 rounds. So you score 4 rounds individually. Whichever team has the fewest points wins. Cards 1 through 4 don't have abilities. 5 through 13 do. And then you also have a tent, a few tent cards that are in the deck. For each of those cards that you have in front of you at the end of a round, you are scoring it the same as your lowest card in your campsite. So basically, just like Silver, you're drawing a card and you're either playing the card and using its ability and discarding it, you're swapping it with one or more cards in your campsite, or you're just going to discard it. And something that's cool, though, is you can't communicate with your partner like, hey, I've got a 7 over here face down, right? But if you know your partner's cards and what you have, when one of the things in Silver and in Scram, you can swap out a card that you draw for multiple cards if those cards are all the same. And, if you have 2 7s and your teammate has a 7 and you draw 1, you can replace all 3 of those 7s with a 1.
Oh, cool.
And dwindle the size of your teammate's campsite as well as yours. However, if you're wrong, you take some pretty hefty penalties. You have to keep those cards, and more cards might get added depending on...
Just like Silver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's even I think it has even higher penalties for more cards. Like if you're trying to replace 4 cards and you guessed wrong on 2 of them, you keep those cards, but then you also draw a couple more cards and take a penalty. So basically, you either play the round until the draw pile is exhausted or until someone says Scram. They can only say Scram, I believe, when they have 2 cards in their campsite. You start out with 5 or 6, and it's just a fun little quick card game. Team game.
Nice.
I like.
That you like it.
Yeah, you're
not a team game guy.
I'm not a team game guy. It's just too many bad sequence experiences growing up. I don't know. So I really enjoyed Scram. I didn't get this. Actually, I did buy this at Gen Con, I think, last year, but didn't get it played until just this big game night a couple weeks ago. It was fun to get it off my shelf of shame. Definitely going to stay in the collection. And
nice.
A nice twist on the Silver games, right?
Love it.
With a different retheming. So
that sounds awesome. Well, I would definitely be interested in playing this one.
Something cool. We've got some Bezier trick-taking games that we've received some copies of that we're going to be talking about in the future. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Looking forward to that too.
Yeah, because we love trick-taking games.
Yeah, I recently, in a recent episode, I talked about Arum, which is a trick-taking game. A team game, another one.
Yeah.
You need to play that one.
Yeah,
I think you might like it.
I don't know. That's more than one in a month that I like.
That
I don't
may
know.
be pressing our luck here a little bit. But yeah, love trick takers. So that's great.
Cool. So that's Scram from Bezier Games, designed by Ted Alspach.
Cool.
And well, that wraps up the games that we've been playing lately. Let's jump into Clans of Caledonia, our feature review. We like to kick those off with a rules overview or rules summary from Kevin.
Clans of Caledonia is designed by Juma Al-JouJou, published by Karma Games with art done by Clemens Franz. Clans of Caledonia is a strategic economic game set in 19th century Scotland. During this period, Scotland made the transition from a predominantly agricultural economy to an industrialized one, heavily reliant on trade and export. As a consequence, food production increased to support the growth in population. Cheap cotton imports increasingly replaced linen, and raising sheep gained importance. When European wine and brandy production was ravaged by a plague of insects in the late 19th century, Scotch whiskey was drafted as a substitute for cognac. The whiskey industry exploded into life, turning it into the premium alcoholic beverage in Europe. In Clans of Caledonia, players represent unique historical clans competing to produce, trade, and export agricultural goods as well as their famous whiskey. Clans of Caledonia is a big game. I'm not going to explain all the rules, but I will give a high-level overview of how the game plays. The game consists of 4 different map modules. These get put together to form the game board and can be mixed and matched to provide variety to the game. To start the game, players will draft the clan that they will be playing as during the game. Each clan has a unique ability that will give players specific advantages throughout the game. Each player will also have a player board that will have various tokens. Tokens such as cows, sheep, and distilleries will be put out on the board during the game, while other tokens will be used to track upgrades, such as your shipping range. An export board is placed next to the main board. The export board will have randomly placed export contracts that players can fulfill during the game. The export board also shows end-of-round scoring tiles. Players can get end-of-round points if they fulfill the requirements on the scoring tiles. The market board is also placed next to the main board. The market board will be used during the game to track the current price of all of the basic and processed goods. Clans of Caledonia is played over 5 rounds with 4 phases in each round. Phase 1 is preparation for the next round. Phase 2 is where the meat of the game takes place. There are 8 available actions that a player can take. Each player takes exactly 1 action per turn, and each action can be taken multiple times per round. The first action is trade. Trade will allow you to send a merchant to the trade board and buy a good at the current cost. The second action is obtaining an export contract. Costs vary for export contracts based on the current round of the game. Players are only allowed 1 unfulfilled export contract. The third action is expand. Players can take 1 token from their player board and place it on a space that is neighboring or within shipping distance of one of their units. The fourth action is upgrading your shipping. This will help with expanding. The fifth action is upgrading your technology. Your woodcutters and miners get upgraded equipment, which will give you more money each round. The sixth action is hiring a merchant. This will allow you to buy more goods from the trade board. The seventh action is fulfilling an export contract. Players will turn in the necessary goods or slaughter animals, removing them from the main board and back to their player board. The last thing you do on your turn is pass. Passing will determine turn order for the next round and will give you end-of-round income. Phase 3 is production. During the production phase, players receive income and produce goods from units that are deployed on the map. Phase 4 is scoring. In this phase, players earn the glory bonus indicated on the bottom half of the current scoring tile, if they have fulfilled the requirements on the top half. Final scoring takes place after 5 rounds are completed. Players earn glory for their place on the glory track, basic goods, processed goods, money, hops, and for tobacco, cotton, and sugar on export contracts according to their rarity. The player with the most victory points is proclaimed the greatest clan chief of Caledonia and wins the game. That's a very high-level overview of how to play. Let's get back to the table to see what we thought of Clans of Caledonia.
Thanks, Kevin, for the rules.
Hey, no problem, Tyler.
Yeah. So what's our structure with our feature reviews? After the rules, we talk about the production, things that we like and dislike. And then we talk about gameplay, also things we like and dislike. And then we're going to give our final ratings on Clans of Caledonia.
Yeah, so what do we like about the production? Dan, what do you think?
So I really think it's a really well-produced game. I have upgraded my copy with all of the bits from
Top Shelf Gamer.
Yeah. The production of the game is very well done. I love the bits. I love the pieces, but I have upgraded the bits to the 3-dimensional bits that just make gameplay that much better.
The cheese that actually looks like cheese. Happy to report Tyler didn't eat it.
I didn't. I was tempted because I love me some cheese.
And the whiskey barrels that look like barrels. I mean, there's a few games out there that have good-looking barrels, and this is probably the best game that has the upgraded bits that look very, very realistic.
Yep.
But even the non-upgraded bits that come with the game, I think
all wooden.
They're all wooden. They look I think they're really well done.
Yes.
I have no complaints with the bits that come with the game at all. I think they're great.
The silk bags from Board Game Geek.
Yes, the Board Game Geek store. So those are awesome too.
Yeah, that's huge when you're putting out new contracts, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have the stacks that are going to fall over. You just reach in the bag and put them out and refill the
So
contracts.
we're talking a little bit about upgraded bits.
Yeah.
What about the game in its base form? How's
So-
the production?
So I think the art's great. The one little nit that I have about the game is the size of the game.
Yep.
Right. I think it's just a little bit too small.
Yeah.
I would like it to be maybe 50% bigger, but everything else about the game, I think, is done really well. We talked about the little wooden pieces. I think the wooden pieces are great. The barrels and the dairies and everything that you put out onto the board, they're wooden pieces. I think they're done really well. I mean, I really don't have any other complaints about the game other than the size of the game. I think it's done great.
There's no board warping. I love the art from Clemens Franz, like you mentioned. The art is just awesome. It just takes me to Scotland.
Yep.
Well, and then the other thing about the game production is the main game board. You can flip over the sides, so every time the board is different.
Yep, and I think there's a possibility of 16 different board layouts, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. The one thing I will give a criticism on is, and this is just because I'm kind of a coin snob, I don't like cardboard coins. So almost every game that I have, I will try to upgrade the coins, but that's that's really not a slam on the game production itself, unless you slam every other game out there that has cardboard coins.
Right.
Yeah, because 99% of the games out there, unless you get a Kickstarter that you get the upgraded stuff in the Kickstarter, you're going to have cardboard coins. Yep. But I'm with you. I love the metal coins. They're if you can get those, it's awesome. We've talked a lot about upgraded bits already, but we just played and used the iron clays for the money. Anytime you can have an excuse to use iron clays, use iron clays because they are amazing. But
and there is a coin set for Clans of Caledonia.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That you could have gotten back in the day. I don't know that it's still available, but maybe it's going to be available with the upcoming Kickstarter.
I wouldn't be surprised.
One other comment on production is I do like the way how well the rule book is laid out.
Oh, absolutely.
It does read very well. If you ever need to look up a rule, it's very quick and easy to find. And I really do appreciate in games a very well written rule book.
I love the little clear discs on the market so that you can
I was
see
just going to say that. Yeah.
what the current value, whether you're buying or selling your goods on the market is as it slides up and down those number tracks. So anything else about the production of this game? Like I said, the art's awesome. But not only that, the iconography everywhere is just fantastic.
And how the cost, if it's a cost, it's going to be a red number. It's clear. It's easy to see where you're going and expanding to and how much it's going to cost. Yeah, everything I think is really well done there.
Yeah. And just one more comment on the production. The player aids, you can. It's a very they're thick cardboard.
Yep.
So you have them right next to you, and they have one for every player.
Yep.
So it's not you all have to share one. It's great that there's one for every player.
Yep.
And it's very well concise that when I teach the game, I actually make sure that I follow the process across the top, and then when we get to the main action section, you can just go through it, and it makes it for teaching the game a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that is true. That's awesome. I'm glad that you brought that up. So I think the consensus is we love the production of this game. It could stand to be slightly bigger.
Yeah. We didn't mention the box either. That's one other thing that I just thought about. The game barely fits in the box, right? And I don't get me wrong. I appreciate a small box.
I was going to say
because the shelf space is a premium.
Yep.
But this one maybe is just a little too small.
Yeah.
Right? I think this game is screaming for a deluxe version, right? Like something that expands the board a little bit, maybe makes the box a little bit bigger. Maybe includes the new expansion that's coming. Something like that. That's a deluxe version. I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
right?
It'll be interesting to see what's available with the
maybe that's in
upcoming
the works.
Kickstarter.
Exactly. So gameplay. What are some things we like about how this game plays? Tyler, what do you think?
So from the very start, from the first time that I ever played this, and I remember playing this with you for the first time, Kevin, and I think Mark was playing with us.
Yep.
I love the market and buying and selling and manipulating the prices of goods. If I see that Dan needs to buy a lot of wheat or wool, I might go ahead and buy it before him if I'm also trying to fulfill a contract that needs wool? Or, there's just so many interesting decisions that come from the market alone. And since we have Dan here, I think it's worth mentioning we played this game wrong for at least the first 7 or 8 plays.
Yes, we did.
We were doing some
high-speed
trading.
High-speed trading. I felt like
you were manipulating the crap out of that.
Yeah, I was buying and selling just to eke out the same good in the same round, just to eke out enough coins. Because when you buy it, it goes up in price, but then when you sell it, it goes down in price, whatever good you're buying and selling. So you can buy high or buy low and then sell high in the same round, or sell low and buy high.
Which is against the rules.
Which is against the rules.
Yeah, and you can combo that with the neighborhood bonus.
And so you just really manipulate the market. And even without that wrong rule being played, I still love playing the market. But the first time we sat down to play with Dan, he was like, what are you guys doing?
It was at Cabin Con, right? And it's like, you can't do that. And Tyler's like, huh?
Yeah.
This is the best part of the game. What do you mean?
So my soul was a little bit crushed that day, but I still love the market mechanic and how well it represents supply and demand. I think it's just perfect.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of timing on when things happen in the game and looking at everybody else's player board, looking at where they're moving on the map, looking at how many resources they have, and then trying to time what you want to do before they do, so you can get the bigger benefit, right? I just love that, cutting them off from a section of the map, or like you said, selling or buying a good to manipulate that market. Timing has such a big part of this game, and it's just fascinating to try to figure that out. It's just a puzzle that's fun. I love that part of the game.
One of the things that there's not a specific game mechanic that just is much better than any other game mechanics in this game, but what I really do like is the replayability. I like the fact that the boards, you can flip them over to get so many different boards. I like that you can always play with a different clan and it's asymmetric, right? So everyone's playing with a different set of unique abilities. I like that also accompanying your clan, you each have a different set of starting resources. There's just so many different ways that the game is replayable, so it's different from the last time that you played it.
Yeah, the port tiles are different. The scoring tiles each round are different. The layout of the 4 boards is different.
And there's already so many choices that you have to make to try to figure out how you can win the game. But now with so much variability from game to game to game, it's not like you can always rely on the exact same strategy that has helped you in the past. It helps. It's just great for replayability, and it's great to always figure out a new strategy each time you play.
Yeah, I love looking at the board state to start the game, like what port tiles are available, and then picking a strategy in my mind and then trying to execute that strategy. You got to be tactical in this game too, though, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you can just say, this is the strategy I'm going with, and then I'm going to be successful no matter what. Somebody's going to get in your way at some point in the game, and you're going to have to pivot a little bit to go in a different direction. And I think I love games like that where there's a lot of strategic depth, but there's also a little bit of tactics in there too, where you got to, think on your feet during the game. That makes the game a little bit more exciting and not, a bland, just 100% strategy game.
Well, and I feel like it has, for a Euro game, the perfect amount of player interaction.
Yes.
And it's mostly in the form of blocking.
Yep.
And the neighborhood bonuses. Like if I want to buy cheese for cheaper, I'm going to go build something next to Kevin's cheese that's already on the map, and I get a huge discount. And so there's just enough player interaction in the game that just it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. And I love the fact that money is so tight, right?
Yeah.
Like $1 dollar or whatever it's called in the game, right, can mean you do what you need to do or you don't, right? And it can completely derail you if you calculate wrong. It can completely derail your round or even your game, right? It's like, I'm 1 money short from fulfilling this contract.
I remember the first few times that I played Clans, I struggled. It's like, how do you get money in this game? It's so hard. But once you kind of see all the mechanics, you can figure out different ways to get the money. But yeah, the money can be tight, but there are ways to get it and overcome that challenge.
Yeah.
I feel like the game is really well balanced. I feel like there are a number of different paths to victory. You can focus on the contracts. You can focus on the network bonus and trying to expand over the whole map and get as many of your buildings and workers out as possible.
Or the end of round scoring.
The end of round scoring.
Maximize that. Right?
Yeah, you can score some big points from that. I feel like the game is so balanced. There's multiple paths to victory. Obviously, the contracts come into play quite a bit, but I just feel like it's such a well-balanced game, and there's not a lot of luck in the game.
There's not. The only luck that's in the game is with the contracts, right?
Yep.
So if you get rid of, you get all of your cheese dairies out, for example, and you have an open spot for a contract, you can then draw 3 random contracts and have the opportunity to buy one of those. And that can go in your favor, right?
Yep.
Or it can kind of bite you a little bit. And
It's a little painful.
Yeah, and then you don't get what you need. So that's really the only luck in the game, right?
But if this is news to you, check out the expansion that's coming soon, because that's going to address that issue.
Yep, exactly.
That's coming out in a Kickstarter?
Yeah, it'll be a Kickstarter, I think, in the next couple months. 2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months is what Juma mentioned. So
I'm excited for that. This is the first I've heard of it tonight.
Yeah.
breaking news.
So.
Yeah, man, super excited for it. There's some. It's a big expansion. There's going to be a lot of stuff in it, which is cool.
And there's going to be some modular stuff, but we'll
talk about.
We'll get to that in the
cover that in the interview.
Yeah, a little bit more. So,
So the other thing that I think is really unique is I'd say almost every single game that I've played of Clans, which I've played it 19 times now, 43 plus hours, right? I have never felt that I can't come back from being behind. For example, this last game that we were playing, Tyler was winning. It was very clear that he was going to win the neighborhood settlement bonus, right? So I said, you know what? I'm not even going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on this other. I was going to focus on contracts because I knew I could beat Tyler on the contracts. So I didn't feel like, oh, he's running away with the game. And in the end, the game that we played tonight, what was it, a 6-point span? It was a very close game between all three of us.
Between all three of us, yep.
Yeah, and we all went for slightly different strategies.
Yeah.
Which the fact that we're all competitive.
Kevin did some hate drafting.
I did, which I think is important in this game. Hey, you gotta play to win, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
I still came in last, but hey, we were all close.
I hate those games where if you ever fall behind, it's hard to catch back up, and I don't think this is one of those games. It has so many different paths to victory that you could always figure out a way to come from behind.
Yeah, and at the very least, put up a decent score, right? I love that I have played it at 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, and I love it at all player counts. I think maybe 3 is the optimal, but it is fun and enjoyable at all player counts. The board scales down a little bit with 2 players. There's less contracts available. So there's some slight changes that just make it really good at 2-player.
Yeah, I will say at 4-player, that board gets tight really quick.
Yeah.
And that your, area control becomes that much more important. You can easily block other people out of, the
whole sections of
the board or, the port tiles. You can make it so people can't get those, which I think is just a really cool part of the game. So so initial placement of where you put your people is so important. And that's another thing I love about it.
Yeah. Well. And if, like you said, if you're playing 4-player, the board just gets expanded so quickly. It puts more emphasis on taking that build and expand action,
right?
Versus focusing on contracts initially, or, there's more emphasis up front the first couple of rounds of how am I going to get to where I want to go? How do I not get cut off from, to the point where I can't expand at all, because then you're miserable. I mean,
and super tough decisions, right?
Yes.
Because you're like, okay, I got to get up to this part of the map, but the only way I can get there is to go on a tile that costs 5 or 6, right? But then once I get there, it opens up this whole other section. So, I've got to buy this contract. I've got to go here before it gets blocked off. Like, whoa, what do I do?
And that combined with the fact that, like we mentioned, starting out, you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah,
those first few rounds.
Yeah. So, and if you want to start getting distilleries out, or the bakeries out, you got to have wheat for that. And if you're throwing down a wheat, that's 18 to get that out, and you don't have much money to start. It's like a kick in the gut. Yeah. But it sets you up. You're playing the long game at that point, right? It sets you up for future rounds where you're going to be able to produce that whiskey, produce the bread, and then turn around and sell that for more money later. So that whole balance is really cool.
Yeah.
So this may be a really short section of the review, but what don't we like about the gameplay?
I got nothing.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I got nothing either. That's why it's one of my top games. I love playing it. If there's any time where I can get it out to the table, I will. What I don't like about it, if I ever have 5 people, can't play it.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
5-player expansion coming. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, there's really nothing that I can say about it either. But the only thing would be there is a little bit of that randomness in the contracts, but that doesn't really bother me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that as being a criticism by some, but for me, it adds a little bit of variability. It's exciting to see what comes up, right? It makes it not quite. I mean, if it's a pure strategy game, a lot of times those games can be a little dry, right? Yeah. So adding a little variability, I don't think is a bad thing. But I could see how some people may have an issue with that.
Yeah. And like we said, that's going to be addressed in the expansion.
Yep. If you don't like that, then there's an expansion that'll address it.
I could see that that's a small issue, but sometimes you play a full game and you're not even ever getting that bonus action of drawing 3 tiles anyway. So,
sure. Yeah.
This isn't a negative on the game. I have a really hard time slaughtering my sheep and my cattle after I paid so much money to get them out there.
You have an emotional attachment to them?
I do. And,
do you name them, Tyler?
I feel like no. Heifer. I don't, it feels like going backwards a little bit. And this is not a negative at all. Yeah. It's just my personal feeling. I don't like to slaughter the animals, and I tend to avoid picking up some of those contracts from time to time if they require meat, just because it feels like going backwards. Like, I put the sheep out, I slaughter it, now I have to put the sheep out again, and it costs money. And even if you're putting them out on a very cheap location and you get to put it right back out before someone else takes the spot, it still feels painful to pay for something again like that.
I'm quite the opposite. I actually like.
We saw that in the last game. Yeah,
I was slaughtering my cows and sheep constantly.
What's the clan that is the milkmaid or the milking clan?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of that
but
one.
But that was the clan that Dan had, and we were laughing because he was constantly milking and then slaughtering, right?
And then slaughtering, yeah. I just think, for me, I look at that and I actually find it an easy way. Rather than waiting around for production, I can put out my meat, slaughter it the same round, and fulfill that contract.
And those contracts are going to give you bonuses, right? So if you pick the right contracts, you'll get additional money from those contracts, or you can expand your network for cheaper. So, I mean, that's definitely not a bad way to go.
And I'm not like advocating like no slaughtering of animals or anything, because I do contracts
itself. Yeah,
I do it all the time in the game, but sometimes I'm like, I really don't want that contract.
Oh, man, Bessie, I'm so attached to you. I don't want you to go to the slaughterhouse. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I can see that. I can see that.
And that's, again, not a negative at all.
If there's a minor nitpick, that's it.
Yeah, right. It's my own internal conflict of I just paid for this guy. Yeah. And it's not any different than really buying a bread that you're then sacrificing to fulfill a contract. It's just mentally, I don't know, messes with me a little bit. It's a little different. I'm weird. Whatever. Any actual negatives about this game?
No, I don't think so. Maybe if you had bad eyes, you can't see it very well. But I think I don't think there's really much negative that I have to say about it. It's an amazing game.
It really is.
Yeah.
Should we go to our final thoughts and ratings?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
For our listeners, recently we've changed to a 0 to 100 rating scale. 100 being the cream of the crop. So
Tyson loves this scale.
he does, and he's not here to argue his side of the scale controversy, but
we're going with it.
we're sticking with it.
That's
0
right.
to 100. So, Dan, would you like to go first? Give us your final thoughts and your rating on Clans of Caledonia.
It is one of my top games. Absolutely. I love to bring it out to the table every chance I can get. I love playing it with people that already know it because the gameplay is very fast paced. You don't have a lot of downtime. Production quality is great. Production quality is even better if you upgrade it. I have nothing bad to say about this game. I would give it a solid. I never give a game 100, so I would say it's definitely a 94, 95.
Okay.
So 94 or 95? What are you going with that? You got to have.
Was that 94 and a half?
94 and a half?
Are we going?
We'll go 95. It's a really
95.
solid game.
Okay.
I like
Cool.
it.
I like
awesome. That's awesome. I'll go next. This game is fantastic for all the reasons that we've talked about. I love the area control in the game. I love the market. I love how you can manipulate the market. The different clans are amazing. I like getting my clan, you draft it at the beginning and then you maximizing what your clan does best, whether that's storing whiskey, whether that's, milk, you get a bunch of cows out. There's just a bunch of different strategies that you can explore in this game. And like we talked about, I don't think that there's a dominant strategy. You can go different directions and still be competitive. There's so much to explore in this game. The production's fantastic. It's a high score for me as well. I struggle to give a game, the 100 out of a scale of 0 to 100. I had in my mind before Dan even said his rating that it's going to be a 95 for me. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
95.
95 out of 100.
We're averaging 95.
That's a solid
Awesome.
solid score.
So I agree with everything you guys have said. For me, the flow of the game, right? There's 8 different actions that you can do. They're all really quick. You pick one and that's your turn and the game just flows. The variability, the production, it's fantastic. The thing I love about this game is every single decision on every single turn feels engaging and rewarding and fun. And it makes me feel smart when I do something awesome and makes me feel really dumb when I do something stupid. But I love the decisions in this game. Money is scarce. People are competing for area control. There's ways to manipulate the market. I just love the decisions in this game. They are so rewarding. I love when the other players pass and then you still get like 7 or 8 more actions because you have tons of money. And I love that. I love the decisions. We didn't even talk about this, but when you pass, if you're the first to pass, that's turn order for the next round, which is a big part of the game. You also get more coins when you pass versus if you pass second, third, or fourth. So many cool decisions in this game. I absolutely love it. This was my number 1 game of all time when we did our lists a year and a half ago. And I don't think that has changed. At some point, we might revisit those lists. This game, I'm not going to give it 100.
Oh, boo.
But it's a 99 for me.
99! Whoa!
Yeah. And that one small ding is if the game was just slightly bigger, that would take it up to 100 for
That's
me.
a 1 point deduction.
Yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a perfect game. It's very comparable to Gaia Project and Terra Mystica. And of the 3, I hands down.
I would play this one 10 out of 10 times over those games.
Yeah. I love Gaia Project. Terra Mystica is a little bit less for me, but this is a fantastic game, and I absolutely love it. So 99, 95 for Dan, and 95 for Kevin. I don't know that
we have never had scores that high collectively.
Yeah.
I mean, we've rated games in our old scale of 5 out of 5, but how would that translate to our new scale?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Our new scale is so much better.
Right.
It is.
Yes.
And we knew Dan loved the game, so we kind of
Stacked the deck.
We stacked the deck. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get Tyson playing this one more. So
Yeah, we do.
I think he would love it as well.
I think he would too.
He would probably give it a 90. I don't know. He's a little bit adverse to.
He sticks to the 10s.
He sticks to the 10s, but we'll have to get him playing and then maybe revisit Clans in a future episode. See what he would rate it.
Absolutely. Awesome. So that completes the feature review part of our episode. We're going to jump into an interview with Juma Al-JouJou, the designer of Clans of Caledonia. This is Kevin and I interviewing him, and this was from a few days ago. It was an absolute blast and a wonderful treat.
Yeah, I mean, we hope you guys enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, and we're going to try and do some more interviews in the future. We're going to try and keep that going with designers and maybe some other individuals in the board game community. So here's the interview with Juma.
Well, we're so excited to have our next guest on the show. We are joined by Juma Al-JouJou. Welcome, Juma.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yep, Juma is the owner of Karma Games, also the designer of one of our all-time favorite games on the longest turn, Clans of Caledonia.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I think it was your number one game of all time, may still be your number one game, right, Tyler?
Yep.
It is high on my list as well. Tyler and I have been playing this for years, as well as some other people in our game group, and it's just a fantastic game. We'll get into that a little bit later in the interview. What I thought we could do to start off, Juma, is maybe you can give us a history of Karma Games. You know, how you started Karma Games. What was your motivation to get going with Karma Games?
Yeah. Thanks for the first round of applause. It's nice to hear that people like my games. Well, I actually started to ponder about starting doing game design and also dabble into game publishing while I studied in the Netherlands in Enschede. And so back then I was I remember I was commuting back and forth a lot to Berlin. So I was often waiting for the train, and that I used that idle time to think about one of my favorite strategy games of my childhood, which was El Grande, which is still quite ranked very highly on Board Game Geek. And I was really fascinated by the game, and I tried to imagine why they made certain choices and why they didn't make other choices in some instances, and kind of tried to imagine how the game would play if they had made some other choices than they did. And then I soon actually started to really design a game inspired by El Grande. I soon changed the theme completely. So in the end, it turned out to be a very different game, roughly inspired by it. Actually, I think hardly anyone recognizes the inspiration. But very quickly, when I started to design this game, which later was called Green Deal, I realized how much fun it is to basically come up with a game from scratch. You have all the freedom, and it's a way to express yourself like in other forms of art. And I was immediately hooked. I mean, I didn't even know how to do it, right? I didn't read any book, or no one taught me how to design games. I just did things like how I think it could work out. I printed stuff. I convinced people to try out my prototypes and iterated on those. And so I very quickly thought, this is so much fun. I would like to do this more seriously, maybe after my studies. And then I researched, and I found out that there are very few people who actually can make a living with board games, especially back then. It's more than 10 years ago. There were only a couple of game designers in Germany who basically made a living with making board game design. And but then I thought, well, if they cannot make a living, I mean, the publishers must make a living because they're companies, right? So, and I studied entrepreneurship at that time. So I thought maybe this is like, this is my fate, you know. I mean, why don't I just start like a publishing company from the very beginning?
Might as well give it a shot, right?
Yeah. And then very early on decided to do that, even before I finished my studies. And my master thesis was also about business models, and I basically analyzed the business model of this new publishing company that I was about to start, and that helped me get a scholarship,
Sweet.
a public grant for startups that are like founded out of the academic context. And yeah, so that was a very quick start, let's say. I was maybe a bit naive, but also brave, and just started to do that, and that was fun.
Yeah, it's got to be, I would imagine, kind of nerve-wracking just to start a new company, right? I mean, that's got to be a leap of faith to do that.
Well, to be honest, back then I didn't feel that nervous at all. I basically told myself like, I mean, what can happen? Yeah, the biggest cost is basically my opportunity cost. Yeah, I could earn more as an employee, yes. But I mean, I will never starve here, right? I mean, before I starve, I will just close the company and be unemployed. And even that is not the worst in Germany. You will still not starve. You have a pretty good social security system, which you can fall into. So that is basically a solid safety net. And I thought, worst case, it's a failure, but probably it was a hell of a ride, and I probably learned a lot. So I thought, just give it a try.
It's awesome. So Green Deal was your first game published under Karma Games then?
Mm-hmm.
Is that still available at all in print?
No, it's out of print. It's sold out. Yeah.
Okay.
How long until, I guess, Clans of Caledonia came about after you started Karma Games?
Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting experience with Green Deal, because Green Deal did receive good reviews. For instance, Tom Vassell loved it and gave his seal of excellence, or like, so he really, really liked it. And so partly the feedback was very positive by influential people who know a lot about games, but the game didn't sell so well. And one learning for a while, I mainly focused on trying to sell the game, but that was an uphill battle. And at some point I really had to, I had a really tough decision. I was realizing, okay, this is not financially feasible and stable. So it's not really, I cannot go on like this forever. It's not, earning me enough money. But at the same time, I mean, the theme of Green Deal was sustainable management. So it was about like sustainability in a corporate context. And so it was also slightly, I would say, idealistic. There was some idealistic motivation. I wanted to, I knew a lot about the topic. I read about the topic, and it was like sort of informational, educational, but more for adults. Yeah. And I had to realize, like, if I don't sell the game, then the social impact of the game is also very small. So I'm not achieving anything. It was like hard to swallow that pill, but at some point, you gotta become realistic. Even though as an entrepreneur, you tend to be a bit over optimistic, and so then I was pondering what to do, and a very crucial moment was when I stumbled upon a TED talk by Peter Singer, who is like a philosophy professor, and he advocates for effective altruism, which is a social movement and / practical philosophy, which you could call it's inspired by utilitarianism. And so basically it's trying to be very pragmatic in the way how to do good. And he advocates for there are many ways how you can do good, and it's always a good idea to really think about how you can do the most good with the resources available. And he said, like, he knows people who have, like, let's say, a special gift that allows them to go to investment banking and make 200K a year. and they can donate, say, 60-70% of that income, and with that income to like effective charities in developing countries. And with their large donation every year, they can basically finance several people who work in a charity. So it's much more effective for them to do it that way rather than work in a charity themselves. And I was really hooked by this pragmatic approach, and I never kind of considered that you can be idealistic, but then be so pragmatic in the ways how you achieve social good and social impact. And that was a real turning point, because it was kind of important for me to not just do anything, but something with a social impact. And so I basically pondered, either I leave the board game industry altogether and do something completely different, like, I don't know, go into the startup world or so, or become a consultant, or continue to do board games. But if I do that, I need to do something different. And I realized that educational games, they just don't sell usually, because people who are into sustainability, they don't want to play a game about sustainability usually, because the motivation of there is this term called escapism. Yeah, we like to dabble into a new world when you play something, either online or in a board game, and we to some degree want to escape the reality that we are going through every day. And so educational themes tend to be rather realistic, so they don't satisfy a core motivation of many gamers. So I had to admit that, like, doing educational games for a living and selling them on the market is hard. So, but with this new thought of effective altruism, I had the idea, well, there is now a new alternative. Rather than keep making education games that are not successful, or going into the startup world and not doing anything with social impact. And the third alternative would be just focus on making good games that sell, maybe with no educational or social impact theme. But then if I manage to become financially successful, I can just donate a part of my revenue to causes that I think are very effective and very efficient and do a lot of good. And that way I'm probably have a greater social impact than if I try to have a social impact directly through my games. And that was really like the absolute turning point for me, I would say, almost of my whole professional career, because that shift in mind, that basically allowed a shift in mind such that I started to become a real entrepreneur. Rather than trying to make a product that I think people should like, I started to make a product that I knew people would love. Because I basically studied the market, I studied like trends, I studied like which type of games people like. I realized, okay, who am I as a gamer, and which type of gamer do I understand really well? And I defined a target group, and I very consciously made Clans of Caledonia for the target group. I didn't just make a game, but I strategically planned who's the target group and what kind of theme would they like, what kind of mechanics do they like. I even sometimes made game design choices that were not necessarily 100% appealing to myself, but I knew they were appealing to the target group, because in the end, I'm not my target group. I don't want to sell the game to myself, right? And that's the difference, I mean, usually, or many game designers, and myself included, rather act as artists. But at that point, I started to become a game designer who's mostly entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Clans is so successful. And because everything fit together, the theme, the mechanics. So I'm very grateful for this turning point. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that something about social impact basically made me a lot more financially successful.
Yeah, that is super interesting, and you definitely you nailed it with Clans of Caledonia. And I love that idea of effective altruism that you talked about. I read about that a little bit on your website, and it's just fascinating, right? You can do more good designing a game that is not necessarily about sustainability, right? But you become more successful that way, and then you can then donate to charitable causes, which is that's amazing. That's really cool.
I was going to ask if there are ever times where you were discouraged and almost backed out or almost quit. But you already kind of answered that. It sounds like both your educational background and tools and talks and things you found along the way helped you to persevere and keep going.
Yeah.
So you mentioned charitable causes. Are there any charitable causes that you're especially, passionate about, or you're passionate about supporting?
Yes. In the past, I have focused mostly on GiveWell, which is a website that analyzes many, I think several thousand even NGOs and charities. And they only recommend, I think, 3 to 5 causes, and I focused on their recommendations. What is a bit particular about them is they really focus on, let's say, social causes and not environmental ones. And so that's why I focused on like Against Malaria Foundation and the deworming in Sub-Sahara, which is also something really crazy. Like, I mean, there are many kids who basically cannot go to school because they have some worms in their guts, and it only costs a couple dollars to cure them. And these couple dollars and the medication would basically then allow them to go back to school. So you can imagine like how drastic the impact of a couple dollars will have on that kid's future. Yeah. So it's kind of in the, let's say, Western world, we're like living in abundance, and it just makes so much sense to kind of sacrifice a little bit of personal comfort and a little bit of personal income and to do so much more good in this way.
It's such a rewarding feeling to help other people out.
Yeah.
I love your approach and Karma Games' approach, and I think it's fantastic, the things that you're doing with your successes.
I love it. It's awesome. Well, let's talk about some games. You've got a Kickstarter that's coming up for the Clans. It's an expansion for Clans. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like when the Kickstarter is going to start, and a little bit about the expansion?
Yes, I can. It's called Clans of Caledonia Industria. Industria is Latin because Caledonia was already the Latin word for Scotland. And the setting is a bit farther down in the industrialization era and period. And the expansion shall hit Kickstarter in the next 2 to 3 months. We're now like finalizing all the graphics. The game design is more or less finished. We're just like playtesting and balancing and fine-tuning numbers, but like the components and everything is set. And it's going to be a rather big expansion. I mean, people also waited for quite a while for it, but yeah, it's going to be big.
Was it harder to design the expansion than it was the base game?
It was actually very challenging to design it. I think it was probably more challenging to design the expansion than the base game. It's not that easy to make an expansion for a game that has so many interdependent systems like Clans and still make it work. So there are more port tiles, there are more scoring tiles, there are a lot more clans. The clans are very much inspired by industrial themes, I would say, more or less. Like there is a threshing clan, there is a clan that focuses on railroads, they expand a bit differently. There is a breeding clan, which is a bit like, like mass farming, you could say. Then you have a hot blast clan. There is a textile clan that focus on cotton and textile production. And those are, I would say, a bit more thematic and also a bit more intricate and a bit more complex. Not all of them, but most of them are a bit more complex and more intricate and more thematic than the base game clans, which I think makes sense because people who are going into the expansion, they already are familiar and they can take in a bit more complexity. But also, of course, it makes them also a bit more interesting to play. And there are like farmers market, that these are like tiles that you place at the start of the game on a hex, and they depict like a basic good and a processed good. And when you expand neighboring to them, you can sell one type of that good that is depicted there to the market and get some extra money. So it's basically the opposite of the neighborhood discount. And like if both goods to a farmer's market have been delivered by players, then the tile is removed, and then people can actually deploy units there.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
There's also a refill board, right, for the contracts?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, of course, after having Clans out for a couple of years, I read a lot of comments, and like one comment was often that people thought maybe the contracts are important, and the contract flop is to some degree random and unpredictable. So this way you can basically plan ahead because you know which contracts will show up on the export board, and this
Yeah, I was excited about that. And they also immediately refill, right?
Exactly, yeah. It also makes the building bonus a bit more strategic because when you get the building bonus, you know what contracts you can choose from.
Yeah. I was just going to say I'm excited about that because I've had times where I got the building bonus and then I drew 3 random contracts and I wasn't in the position to complete any of them. So that's a little frustrating. So I love this update.
Yeah, you mentioned that you read comments and got feedback from the community. Did you get a lot of comments from the community, and did you incorporate any of those ideas into the final design of the expansion?
I mean, basically, there are a lot of comments on Board Game Geek and threads and so on. And so, I mean, I read most of them. I don't necessarily react to them, but like I passively consume them. And so over the years, I kind of got a feeling for, okay, which are there certain trends which, many people dislike aspect A or really like aspect B.
Right.
And so I did use this feedback strategically, and for instance, one thing was the contract flop. So the let's say the luck factor is basically reduced a lot now. There is, I would say, almost no luck anymore because you can plan ahead so much with the contracts, and this was the only random element anyway. So people who complained about that, they are basically muted now. But other things, for instance, what people liked was the dynamic state of the map because of the meat. Like some contracts required meat, and that required you to send some of your animals back to the happy farm, and so basically some hexes became available again. And that's an aspect that people liked, which maybe is not as present in other similar games. And so in the expansion, there are several ways how you can do that. And not only with animals, but also with other units of the game. And there are also even like some clan abilities allow you to place 2 specific units on one hex. So in that way, it's a bit more dynamic. And
I had a question about that. Can I play one of my pieces on a hex that already has one of Kevin's pieces on it? Or does it only allow me to put 2 of my tokens on a hex?
2 of your tokens. Would you want to place one of your tokens on Kevin's hex?
Only if I was blocked off from connecting 2 big parts of my network, and that was the way I could get access if I was blocked off.
And how would we call this clan?
The invaders or the encroachers? I don't know.
So
it wouldn't carry your name.
Oh well, that'd be amazing.
Hey, Tyler, you can make it in the game. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about that.
Tyler, you should know that colonialist themes are not very popular in the board game world anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a raiding clan.
Yeah, right. Can you talk a little bit about the new train board and the train mechanics and what you're trying to bring to the game there?
Yeah, that's very exciting. That's like a huge addition to the expansion.
Mm-hmm.
There is a whole new train map introduced. Every player has a train meeple there, and there are certain towns and cities, and there are refill demand tiles that require or are asking basically for a certain set of goods, processed goods, and also basic goods, which is important. And so once per round, a player can move their terrain 1 to 2 locations further. If they bump into another player, they pay that player a few pounds. And then when they stop on a location, they can then fulfill the demand of the demand tile that is adjacent. And if they do that, they gain the unique bonus that is printed on a location bonus tile on that city or town. And those are really interesting and new. It could be, for instance, something like there is a hot air balloon bonus tile that lets you expand like a couple of land hexes further. So you can basically like hop across a couple of land hexes.
Oh, cool.
For free and get some extra other bonus. Or there's another one where I think you take back a field of yours back to your player board in order to fulfill any contract. So you could fulfill a really expensive contract by taking a field back, something like that.
Cool.
This is one example where you take back a unit that is not an animal to your player board. And so every time you make a delivery, that's what it's called, you also move further on a track, which gives you a milestone marker. And with these milestone markers that you gain, you can claim milestones. And there are like 2 shortcuts through mountains. They go through tunnels that you can unlock by claiming the respective milestones. And those are randomized at the start of the game as well. And they are, basically conditions that you need to fulfill to be able to claim that milestone. And if you do that, and you do that first, you gain 8 points. The second person gets 4 points, and so on and so on. So there's a bit of a race to gain the most points that way. And it also pushes players in, let's say, unusual ways. So for instance, one asks you to have all units out, all types of units out. So you would basically generalize and you would try to have all the type of units out on the game board, and then only then you could fulfill this thing. Or another one could be you really want a very big settlement with a lot of units in one big settlement, which you usually try to rather avoid. Or it could be another one is asking for 3 contracts fulfilled, which you might do rather late game, but due to this, you rush to fulfill contracts early so you can claim this first. And that's really fun and interactive. And it doesn't only give you points, but it also gives you new options, because then you can use the shortcut, which basically gives you new ways to expand. And 2 cities like Edinburgh and Glasgow are also locked unless you unlocked it through the respective milestones.
Oh, nice.
So they give you new actions. And so this gives a lot more depth, and also it brings some complexity with it. Although I would say the rules are not actually that complex, but there's just more to think about. You could play with this edition or not. You could also just focus on the other modules of the expansion. So it's not mandatory to play with the train map.
That was going to be my next question, is if you can plug and play different modules.
No, it's actually designed in a way that all the different aspects of the expansion you can add in or not. So they're dependent on each other. So that way, the terrain map is probably the most complex and challenging thing. So if people played it a lot, then you could just, you as a veteran in Clans, you could just play with the terrain map. But people who only played it once, I would say, okay, maybe you played 2 to 3 times with some little additions of the expansion, then you tackle the terrain map. And it's really interesting because now the goods don't only have the use to sell at the market or to use for export contracts, but suddenly you can also deliver at the train map these goods, especially the base goods, which usually you only mostly converted. Sometimes you also sold them, but you mostly converted them to processed goods. And that makes it a bit less predictable in the sense of player interaction, because you have more ways to mitigate. Like, let's say you plan to sell whiskey and someone really dumped the price of whiskey a lot. Now you're considering, can I maybe just deliver whiskey to the train map? And because like I'm not getting a lot from the market anymore. And that's really fun.
That's awesome. I love expansions like that, where it's modules that you can just put in whatever you want to put in. Those are my absolute favorite type of expansion. So this sounds amazing. This needs to come out next week, Juma.
Yeah.
All this stuff sounds awesome. I want to play it. This is great.
Yeah.
Well, there good news. You can already playtest it on TTS, so we can invite you, and we're organizing online playtests regularly. So yeah, we would be happy to play with you. Also, we organize that with American playtesters, so it also works with your time zone.
Oh, fantastic.
I tried the tabletop simulator link the other day, and it didn't look like it was working. So I was wondering if there's a new one, or...
Yeah, right now we kind of keep it in private, so you can reach out to me, and then we can invite you to it.
Cool.
The reason why we did that is because recently there were several reports about counterfeit copies of several games, and it's a big risk. So many people, including, for instance, Stonemaier Games, they actually now start to warn against using Tabletop Simulator, because it makes it very easy for people to pull the graphics and make counterfeit copies.
And then sell it on Amazon, right?
Yeah. Of course, there is still a risk if we invite like individuals to playtest with us, but at least the risk is much, much smaller, I would say. And that's a risk we're happy to take. But just having it like publicly open is kind of an invitation for trouble. And that's why we decided to be a bit more cautious in this matter.
So you've mentioned this, and I noticed in the pre-draft of the rules that I saw, this is a big expansion. I did wonder if while you were designing this and then playtesting and going through all the processes to get this published, were there other ideas or things that you wanted to add in but decided, like, I'll hold off on that until maybe another expansion, or is this it for Clans?
I personally, I'm not that much of an expansion type myself.
Okay.
I don't play that many expansions. I really like elegant games. And most expansions are, usually not that elegant because
sometimes they dilute the experience, right?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I mean, I'm often happy with what I got and not really missing the expansion. And if the base game is not good, usually the expansion doesn't fix it for me. But maybe that's just me. I'm not saying, this is just my personal preference. And making this expansion was already so hard. So I am rather thinking, okay, maybe there's less expansion, even though maybe financially it would make sense to make more expansions for this game. But I'm more interested in making more games in this setting and using this IP. And I don't know, we're considering to do a flip and write game based on Clans, or like a whiskey-based game and so on. So with different mechanics, of course, but like inspired by it a bit. Yeah.
That's an insta buy for me. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Juma, you said that the Kickstarter is going to go live in 2 or 3 months or so. What's your target for delivering it to backers? Are we going to see this in 2024?
I think around the end of the year is still realistic. I mean, we are pretty much done. I mean, we will, I think we're experienced and we have a bigger team. So that's the plan. Of course, nowadays things can happen. You never know. I don't know. Sure. With COVID, you saw how fragile the worldwide logistics can be. So there is a lot that is not in our hand, but that's the goal. And if we don't hit the goal, then maybe it will be slightly delayed, but I'm very optimistic that it won't be heavily delayed.
That kind of lines up with your time frame for delivery of Millennia and Thiefdom, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And there is also Peninsula. I don't know if you've seen that on our website.
Yep. I was going to ask about that too.
We've seen that one as well. Yeah.
Do you plan on crowdfunding that too?
Actually not. Like Kickstarter has this weird rule that you cannot have more than 3 Kickstarter projects open. So that's why we will not put it on Kickstarter, but instead just offer it in the Pledge Manager.
Okay.
Which maybe also makes sense in the sense that it's like a smaller game that is not like the typical game that you would put on Kickstarter or that people would buy on Kickstarter. But I'm still very optimistic that especially like many people will buy Clans and maybe one more of the other games that we put out, that, you know, the small game of Peninsula, it's not going to be that expensive, and it will hardly affect the shipping costs. So you basically get it at a rather low price without having to pay so much extra shipping, that it will be reasonably attractive for people to purchase it. And yeah, it's a different type of game. It's a flip and ride, and I really love it. It's very pretty, and it's very thinky for a flip and ride, and at the same time very elegant. I mean, it's not that complex in the rules, but it's really brain burny. So I think it actually still appeals to the same target group of ours. I mean, even people who play like Clans, they sometimes want to play a filler game, but they want to still play a game that is not that luck based and that still is a bit brain burning and strategic. And I think that's exactly Peninsula. So that's why I'm very, really, really hyped for its release and very curious how good it will sell.
Great.
That sounds awesome. So you mentioned a Clans, some games based on the Clans IP. Is there any other games that you're working on or that you can tell us about that are in development?
I mean, we have some sci-fi based game in the drawer that is,
Nice.
let's say, prioritized a little lower. But that's also something I'm quite, excited about. And if I tell people about it, then usually they're also quite excited. So that's a good sign.
I love it. That's awesome.
And yeah, I'm still missing like a sci-fi game in my pipeline, right? So gotta change that. But we're also in close collaboration with game designers who submitted games to us. And some of those talks are rather advanced, I would say. And yeah, so it could very well be that we will soon sign another game that we might publish. And there are, also interesting themes. Too early to disclose anything, but yeah.
Right.
We'll be excited for whatever the good news is when it comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
So the end of 2023 and going into 2024, you've got multiple Kickstarters, projects that are going to deliver at the end of this year. Are you going to try to maintain that pace going into 2025, or are things going to slow down a little bit?
I'm very happy with how it's gone, but it was also like prepared for quite a while. So like we didn't publish anything in 2022. So basically that's why we published so much this year. So, and it was also the plan to do that, right? I mean, because we have all these games shipped together to end customers. So it makes sense to launch them like shortly, one after the other.
Yeah.
So we won't be able to keep this frequency for the next year for sure. But the team is growing, and it's also quite exciting to, I mean, I've been like a solopreneur for quite a while. And it was also a bit daunting, to be honest, and a bit scary to start to hire people, because as a solopreneur, you can basically hardly go broke, or bankruptcy is almost impossible because you have very low fixed costs and you don't need a lot to survive. But it comes with its own challenges, its own fears to start hiring people. Now you have a running fixed cost and you have a certain pressure. But that's also kind of exciting, and it's also pushing me to be the best version of myself, because I gotta be a good leader to make the team work, and also we need to come up with smart processes so we can basically be efficient as a team, and so of course we need to eventually publish games in order to pay our running costs. And that's really cool. I mean, it's scary and cool at the same time.
Yeah, that is.
Well, we're excited for everything you've got coming up this year and the years after. I mean, this is awesome stuff. So we we really appreciate you taking the time to talk about Karma Games and Clans and all of the other games you have in your pipeline. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff coming in your future, and this is fantastic. So,
Yeah, it's exciting.
yeah, thanks for taking the time and telling us about all the stuff you got going on.
Yeah, thank you as well. I mean, it's always fun to talk about this with people who are interested in it. Also, like, of course, can also be very inspiring. And yeah, I hope we can keep the team growing and add great people to the team and make more awesome games and bring more joy to the world.
Yeah, thanks, Juma. It's been awesome to have you on the show. We really appreciate you joining us. It's just been fantastic time. You know, you designed my number one game, so I'm bouncing off the walls excited. This has just been absolutely awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm also happy now.
No, it's fantastic. So.
All right, that wraps up our interview with Juma Al-JouJou, the owner of Karma Games and designer of Clans of Caledonia, as well as you heard there's a number of other games coming out. Fiefdom and Millennia have already crowdfunded, and Peninsula is also going to be available with the Clans of Caledonia Industria expansion coming soon. So we wish him all the success with that. We're going to be backing it, I'm sure. As well as Dan, as you heard earlier in the episode. Now, Kevin and I are going to jump into the things that we are excited about. So I'm going to go something non-game related.
Okay, yeah.
I recently watched the live Avatar, The Last Airbender series on Netflix.
Yep.
I absolutely loved it. My family loved it. We were big fans of the animated show. This season on Netflix was definitely condensed, but I thought overall the acting was pretty good. For the most part, the characters were well cast. The action, the bending, it was all really well done. The special effects were fantastic, and I loved it. I'm hoping and excited for season 2 and 3 if they do those, and couldn't have been happier watching Avatar The Last Airbender on Netflix after so many disappointments in the fantasy superhero realm of
They finally
movies
got a winner.
and TV shows. Yeah, it feels like it's been a while. So
Yeah.
I was excited about that. I know not everybody loved it. I went into the show thinking, hey, this is not going to be a one-for-one scene of the animated show. There are things that they're going to change a little bit, but for the most part, I thought they did a fantastic job.
Nice.
So I was excited about that.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm excited about some new games that showed up at my house recently.
Nice.
So there a few games from Underdog Games were delivered when they were nice enough to send us some review copies. So Trekking Through History was a game that they sent us, and it looks awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get it played. It looks like a game that is a little bit lighter. It's maybe family weight. It plays in 30 to 60 minutes, which is a perfect time frame for my family. And it's good as a kind of a filler game for game night as well, if you want to end the night with it or maybe start the night with it. It looks like it's got drafting. It's got set collection. It's in a line of games. I think Trekking Through the National Parks or something is one of them. Trekking Through the World. So there's a bunch of games in this series, but I'm excited to explore them.
Awesome.
I've heard about them before, and I'm excited that we can actually get them played. So yeah,
Cool.
should be fun.
I feel like we're entering the crowdfunding season is in full.
Oh, right?
I mean, there are just games coming out left and right going on Kickstarter and GameFound. You got the Cascadia Rolling Rights. You got Flow, Thunder Road Vendetta.
Oh, are you going to back that?
Well, my March spending money is gone, and it's the last day of February, so I'm not sure.
How long does the Kickstarter campaign run? Because you could squeak it into April, right?
I could fudge numbers a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
I don't know. I haven't decided yet. It's a game that if money were not an issue, I'd absolutely back it.
Right.
I've heard great things about it, and
I remember at Gen Con they had some of the Maximum Chrome Kickstarter editions in their booth. And there were so many people that ran to that booth and they were leaving with that game under their arm. I remember I have that in my mind, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, maybe I should have gone to get that, you know?
I'm pretty sure
I
they
wasn't
sold out at Origins too last year. Like it's a popular game.
But I wasn't as interested. But as I play more, I wasn't very interested then. But as I play more games like Cthulhu Death May Die, where it's just an experience to play the game, I'm drawn more to those games. And I think this game is like that. Right?
Yeah,
that you're going to have like these experiences and things that happen that you can talk about. It's like when I ran you off the road,
yeah,
you know,
you can't take too seriously.
Yeah.
I am very interested in it. So you should back it.
I'm thinking about it for sure. So we'll see if that happens. But
Awaken Realms announced their upcoming projects for the year. It's their 10th anniversary of releasing games.
Nice.
That was awesome. Check that out if you're interested in that. There's some really cool announcements. I'm definitely excited and we'll be allocating future funds there as well. Star Wars Unlimited pre-launch is tomorrow, and I think the release is a week from tomorrow. So I'm excited to get my booster box.
Yeah, that I hope booster box is right. Like you told me before, it's like, yeah, I bought a booster box, and then you realized not too long ago, wait a minute, I got 2 of those.
I did buy 2. I got them on a good sale, but yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I hope that game just does awesome. And
I do too.
It's just really really well received, and they support it well. I imagine that they will. Unfortunately, a lot of the Star Wars TCGs in the past have kind of come and gone pretty quick. But I mean, I'm hoping this one has good staying power and that it's just super fun. I did have a chance to play it at Gen Con. I got a demo in, and it was with a smaller deck, limited cards, but the gameplay was really cool, and I liked it a lot. So. I'm excited for you to play.
Yeah, I'm excited. I do look forward to the deck building aspect of it. And this is really going to be my only TCG. So yeah, I think I'm going to pass on the altered crowdfunding TCG.
Yeah, that seems a little risky. That could be awesome though.
It's on Board Game Arena. I don't know if it's going to stay there, but I'm enjoying plays there. And if it stays there, I'm not. I thought about approaching it as a collector, as an investment, and hey, maybe these booster boxes will be really valuable, or some of the cards will be really valuable, and I'm going to pass up that potential opportunity or bad investment. Maybe I don't know. Hopefully it does really well.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean,
but there's only so much space for trading card games.
Yeah, and that's why we've talked about this before. I mean, I'd love to get into Star Wars Unlimited, but there's just not enough time in the day. Like it comes down to funds, if you want to spend all of your money on TCGs, right? and if I didn't have a job, maybe I could do that as well.
You could start a TCG YouTube channel.
Well, there you go. And people would watch it and make tons of money.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Dude.
But if funds and time were not an option, I'd play both. But in my life currently, I can only focus on one. So that's going to be Lorcana for me, and then Unlimited for you, which is great.
And this time of year, like there are, like I said, crowdfunding projects launching like crazy. We're starting to find out, some of the games that are going to get released over the summer. It's an exciting time in the board game year, right?
Horror on the Orient Express.
Yes.
That's another one.
Yes.
Looks amazing, and I'm only going off the box art.
Yes.
Like that train with an eye in the front. It's like, what? I want to know what this game is about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be allocating some funds to that.
Yes.
Etherstone from Thundergriff Games.
Oh, yep.
The follow-up. I think they've done a project since Darwin's Journey, but another follow-up to that.
Right.
And their crowdfunding projects are super successful. Their art's always amazing. I think Etherstone looks beautiful, so check that out.
Yeah.
I believe that launches within a couple days of this episode going live, I think. So
yeah. Good time to be a gamer.
Yeah.
For sure. It's an exciting time. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, should we give a little teaser for our next episode?
Yeah, let's do that. So we
It's been a busy week for us.
Tyler and I were just talking. We apparently we crammed everything for the podcast into this week, but we did some really amazing things and things that we're excited about. We had the Juma interview in this episode. We did another interview
this morning.
And when you think about designers that have had the biggest impact on board gaming in the past 20, 30 years, a lot of people will think of one person.
Yep.
And that person is Reiner Knizia.
Yeah. He's like the Wayne Gretzky of board game design.
Right. And, regardless if you like his designs or not, you can't deny his impact that he's had in board gaming.
Absolutely.
Right. And we were lucky enough to talk to him a little bit this morning.
Yeah. So that will be in our next episode. That interview, we're going to talk about the games that we've been playing lately, and they're all going to be Reiner Knizia games. And then it's just we're going to do the interview, and that's going to be the episode. It was such a fun time talking to him.
Yeah, he was so gracious to do it, and he's just a fun guy to talk to.
Yeah,
right?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
That's coming next week. We hope you enjoyed the interview with Juma, and we're gonna try and line up some more interviews in the future.
We got some stuff in the hopper, right? Yeah. We'll have more announcements to come.
Yeah, and we need to get Tyson back on the episode.
Absolutely.
He's been swamped lately and taking a little bit of a break, but we're gonna get him back on.
Man, it sucks when life gets in the way, right?
Yeah, right. I know.
So Tyson's he's had some of that. So yeah, it's a much needed break for him, a little bit from the podcast, but we want him back on as soon as he's ready to go.
Yeah. So hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you like what we're doing, give us a rating on Apple or wherever you listen to this podcast. It helps us out a ton. We love doing what we do, and we want to spread the word about the podcast.
Yeah. If you're still listening to this point, then you're one of our treasured listeners, and we would appreciate if you could help us grow the podcast by giving us a rating, writing a nice comment on Apple iTunes, whatever it is.
It helps the show.
It helps the show. Golden Geek Awards are coming up.
Oh, vote for The Longest Turn. That'd be huge for us.
If we could just get on the nominated list, that would be fantastic. That would be so awesome. So we would appreciate if you would think about that as well when those become available. We love doing this. This is awesome.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more Longest Turn in your life, please check us out on Instagram. Also, be sure to check us out on Board Game Geek, where you can join our guild, Guild 3947, and check out our blog, where we post all our show notes and occasionally post more detailed reviews. If that's not enough for you, we have a Discord server. If you want to play a game with us on Board Game Arena, join our Board Game Arena group, The Longest Turn. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Tot ziens.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Hello, this is Tyler. Hello. Kevin.
Solid mic check. Yeah. That was good.
Thanks, Kevin, for the rules. I'm kind of hyper.
Yeah.
I'm so.
Okay, and then the format for this section is...
And then we rate it. Be prepared to give a rating from 1 to 100. 0 to 100 if you feel like it deserves a 0.
If you're not comfortable with that, you can...
then you can debate it with us for 10 minutes.
You can say 94. So, Kevin, are you excited about anything? So let's talk about some things that we're excited about.
I don't know. That was funny. But it was. Okay. Clans of Caledonians bring or within shipping distance of one of their units. Can you hear my dog?